in-house, and it takes a lot of time. So anyway, so that's to say that I can't do live streams every week like I would love to, but I'm going to try to do them at least once a month. So today's topic is all about immigration facilitators in Mexico. And I see some of you guys already joining us, so thank you so much for being here. I'm going to get right into it. And don't worry if you cannot stay through the entire thing. Don't worry, this thing is recorded. Today's conversation is fully recorded, so it'll be available for replay on our YouTube channel through the same link. You don't have to use another link or on our Facebook page. So let's get right into it. The very first question that I get is, what is an immigration facilitator, right? Let's first just talk about that. So an immigration facilitator, just so back it up a little bit, facilitators in Mexico usually are individuals, right? Some of them have law degrees, some of them have other kinds of degrees like business degrees, some of them have no degrees, because in Mexico, for the most part, for most of you anyway at home who are coming in and getting a residency visa through economic solvency, or maybe the regularization program, or maybe through family unity, or maybe through children, or maybe you're getting your dual citizenship because you have family ties to a Mexican national. So most of those cases do not require you to have an immigration lawyer. Immigration law is really only used in things like asylum, very specific cases where immigration law is needed. There is a type of immigration law like specialty that people can focus on and know immigration law in and out, but you don't need to be a lawyer in order for you to be able to help somebody receive their residency visa in Mexico. So that's number one. So why we use the word facilitators, because most of these people are not lawyers, and you don't necessarily need a lawyer. Now, the next question that I really get is, when should I hire and when should I not hire a facilitator? And, it really depends on you. That really depends on how much time do you have, your resources, obviously, whether or not you feel really comfortable navigating Mexican bureaucracy on your own or not. And maybe you don't feel comfortable, but maybe you're willing to try it out anyway. And at what point do you think that you should hire somebody? So let's talk about the process for receiving your residency visa for most of you, and when I think it's prudent to hire an immigration facilitator. And don't worry, we're going to go over costs. We're going to go over a lot of other things that people ask us. But for the most part, 99% of you are going to start your immigration process at a Mexican consulate or embassy in your home country. There are a couple of exceptions to this, but for the most part, most of you will be going through economic solvency. So on the consular level or the embassy level, you need to first get an appointment at that specific consulate or embassy that you're going to be applying in. And that is usually done either through the consulate's portal, or it's usually done through email. Very, very, very rarely do they ask you to call, or sometimes they have their own calendar system. So my advice is, if you want to go and get this appointment on your own, and you want to try, and you should try to get this appointment on your own, because it'll be your first taste at Mexican bureaucracy. But the very first thing that you should do is Google the name of, just Google Mexican consulate or Mexican embassy in the name of the city where you live. And then, Google will give you results on what's near you. Now, if you cannot find an appointment for the consulate nearest you, maybe because their online portal doesn't have any appointments available, or maybe because, they don't answer their emails, or just not getting back to you, or maybe you've called the 424 number, the Mi Consulado number that they have available to make appointments, and the representative has told you there's no appointments available, such as it has been recently with Canada. For example, Canada is now barely starting to open appointments for May, where, from February to May, there was really no appointments because they were They were training a lot of their staff, and rumor has it they were just kind of getting everybody up to speed with the new apostille program in Canada. But anyway, I digress. That's not the point. The point is the first thing that you have to get an appointment at the consulate or embassy that you plan to apply in. And to do that, you're going to have to do some homework or some research. You either need to go to their site and look under services to non-Mexicans or services to foreigners. There's a couple of tabs. Usually every consulate has their own website, and there's a couple of tabs. You need to look for the one that says that. Or you can also look for the one that says visas. If you go to that tab, it usually tells you what is needed to make an appointment. Now, keep in mind that Mexican consulates and Mexican embassies don't always do a really good job across the board of updating their sites. So some of them are not updated, and some of them don't have really accurate information as to how to get an appointment at that consulate. Sometimes you just find these things out because, somebody told you, email this email, or, I was able to get an appointment on Wednesday at 12 because Wednesdays at 12 is when they open them up, and they don't really publicize that information anywhere. So that is when I think if you're really having a hard time getting an appointment and you're in one of these boxes that I just mentioned, or maybe you just don't have time, and you just really don't want to spend time day in and day out refreshing that portal, refreshing those calendars, reaching out to them over email, really trying to figure out when you can get an appointment with your nearest consulate or embassy, then that is when I think that you can hire an immigration facilitator to help you with that part of the process. Now, not all immigration facilitators help with that part of the process, because actually the fact is that consulates don't allow third parties to make appointments on your behalf. The consulates want you personally to make that appointment for yourself. However, if you hire an immigration facilitator that offers this service, they do it on your behalf. They do it with your email. They do it kind of pretending to be you. And it saves you a lot of time. And sometimes some of our facilitators have special connections with certain workers at specific consulates. So they're able to get appointments a lot faster than if you were to email them directly, having no relationship with that consulate whatsoever. So there is some form of efficiency, right, that you're paying for by hiring a facilitator to do this for you. But just so you know, like, most of the time they are doing it kind of pretending to be you, because the consulates actually discourage people to hire third parties to help them with this process. The other kind of misconception around this that I get a lot is that I get people asking me, well, can I hire a facilitator to come to my appointment with me in, Houston or in, Raleigh or wherever in the world that they live? And the reality is no, because that, again, the consulates are discouraging people from hiring third parties, and they actually won't allow anybody other than the applicant to come to the consulate for their appointment. So a facilitator can't even go with you to an appointment, even if they lived in the US or Canada or wherever it is that you're applying in. All of our recommended facilitators live in Mexico. And that is because the majority of what they're helping you with will take place in Mexico. Now, some of them do help you book that initial consulate or embassy appointment with the nearest consulate or embassy that you're going to be applying in. Not all of them offer this service. There's a select few, and they're very good at it. I mean, I have customers who said, I've been trying for weeks to get an appointment. And then I contacted, your recommendation in Los Cabos, for example. I have a great recommendation there. She's very good at getting appointments for our customers. And, 2 weeks later, I had an appointment at the consulate that I wanted to. Or sometimes it will require you to travel to a different consulate, which brings me to my next point, which is consulate shopping. And you may hear that term every now and then. And what does that mean? Well, certain consulates allow out-of-state applicants, meaning that you don't have to live in the vicinity, you don't have to live in that area in order for you to be able to apply there, such is the case with Phoenix, McAllen, Raleigh. Those are just a few examples. I think Presidio is another one, Del Rio. So for you Canadian customers who are really, really trying to get this done as soon as possible, what we've been telling our customers is, hey, if you can travel to Las Vegas or Phoenix or Raleigh or Orlando or one of these other consulates, maybe make a vacation out of it and then apply for your residency as well. They accept out-of-state applicants. The majority of those consulates will, however, want to see that you have permission to be in the United States, which most Canadians get permission when they cross the border. But yeah, so that's a way to do it, right? Now, when do I think that maybe you can try to do that on your own? Well, if you're very patient and you think you have a lot of time and maybe very limited resources, I think it's also a good reason why maybe hiring a facilitator is not for you. There are, by the way, you can absolutely do your residency visa process without hiring a facilitator. I personally think hiring them is the best money you will ever spend because, one, it's not very expensive to hire one. Two, they are very knowledgeable in their specific niche. Like they are day in and day out at the immigration offices in Mexico, or in some cases, like I mentioned, dealing with these consulates directly. So they know exactly what is going to be required and how to help you prepare for this, pretty important step in the process. So, but if you just don't have the resources, you can absolutely do this on your own. If you want to get our free residency guide, it's on our website. Just go to mexicorelocationguide.com, look at our free resources, and it's right there. And I give you a lot of steps of how to try to do it on your own. Now, of course, I can't give you specifically every single step per city because it varies by city. Some consulates in the United States will require that each person, even if you're a family applying together, have their own appointment. Some of them will require that all of you can come in together on one appointment. Some of them will require that each person applying be economically solvent. So it doesn't matter if your spouse is applying with you. And there's a lot of little like moving parts to the residency visa process, which does vary sometimes from city to city. That's on your home country side. Now, on the Mexican side, the second part of the process starts in the city where you intend to at least land in, right? Like you don't necessarily need to live in that city in Mexico. In fact, many of our customers end up doing the second part of the residency visa process in a city in Mexico where they don't really plan on living in permanently, but that's the city that they choose because it has either the fastest turnaround times or because they really like the facilitator that we recommend there, or because, they have always wanted to visit this particular city and they're trying to get maybe a vacation out of it and then at the same time finish their residency visa process. So for that second part of the process, I highly recommend that you hire help. Even if the process appears to be very simple, and it is usually very straightforward, assuming that all your documents are in order, assuming that you know exactly what documents you need to bring, assuming that you know how to get an appointment, and everything is done by appointment at the immigration offices in Mexico. And then, of course, assuming that everything is all lined up, that they have plastic cards, that that it's not a holiday. There's a lot of moving parts. So that's where I really recommend that you hire a facilitator. For starters, a facilitator doesn't just help you fill out forms. They can give you insights into how that office works. Like, for example, we've had customers who were thinking about applying in Puerto Vallarta, and Puerto Vallarta had run out of plastic cards. So the facilitator there reached out to me and said, hey, you know what? I think it would be good for you to tell your customers that Puerto Vallarta has currently run out of plastic cards, but I'm sending everybody to Nuevo Vallarta. And that's now in the state of Nayarit, which is, a different INM office, a different immigration office, different process, but, they're actually very efficient there, same day service. And, it worked out for everybody. And Nuevo Vallarta is, about 30 minutes away from Puerto Vallarta. So it's not a big deal. You get a cab, you get there. The cabs usually know where the immigration offices are. And if not, you can just use Google Maps. But yeah, that's the kind of insight that you want, because you might end up going to Puerto Vallarta without hiring somebody and not know that they ran out of plastic cards, because again, this doesn't get publicized anywhere. And then, you can't get your immigration document or your residency visa done in the time frame that you thought you would get it done, and now you have to extend your vacation by 2 weeks or 3 weeks or however long it takes for them to get the equipment to that office. And that happens quite often, and especially in satellite offices. The main offices are usually in big cities like Mexico City, Guadalajara, Merida, Querétaro. Those kinds of cities usually have, all the equipment and a good amount of it. But it doesn't mean that it can't happen there too. So that's, in a nutshell, that's when I think you should hire a facilitator. Another reason why I think hiring a facilitator is the best money you will ever spend is because even though sometimes, and I want to be careful not to say anything negative about the immigration personnel, because I think the immigration personnel are amazing. I mean, they really do handle a lot of applications, and they're usually working, from the minute that they open to the minute that they close, trying to process as many people as possible. But there is usually some turnover. And because of that, some of the newer people in some of the immigration offices might not know the very specific little laws or the little loopholes that the immigration facilitators know in and out. And when you hire a facilitator, sometimes they have to correct the immigration agent on something that they may have told you incorrectly. And this happened to a customer. It's happened to several customers of ours. But I remember one specific story in, I want to say it was in Colima, near Manzanillo. And they had, their whole family was applying for residency. They hired a facilitator, luckily. But the immigration agent told them, nope, you don't qualify. You can't get your second, even though they had approval from the Mexican embassy or consulate that they had originally applied for. They said, no, your documents are incomplete and you cannot do your family unity because, something was wrong in the system. And the facilitator really went to bat for them. I mean, she really worked really hard to make sure that the immigration agents were able to find their documents, that everything was correct. And they were able to get it done in that time frame that they had set aside for their whole family to travel to Colima to get their canje done, which is the second part of the residency visa process. Had they not had this amazing facilitator help them, they probably would have just went back home defeated. Not to mention the expense of traveling there and not getting the actual document that they traveled there to receive. So these stories happen from time to time, and it's not uncommon for the immigration agents who might, at the very, they're not trying to give you wrong information, but they just may not know any better. They might give you wrong information. So the facilitator really is the expert, especially one that has been working in the field for years. And that's, I'm going to speak a little bit about our Complete Mexico Relocation Guide, because I hear sometimes some people say, well, I wish that, you could give me only the facilitators' names, or I wish that I could afford it, or I wish that, and I fully understand that. I do. And what I have found, and what our customers have found, is that, once they start working with our contacts, they realize that we have put a lot of work into vetting the people that we recommend to you guys. I don't recommend just anybody, by the way. I don't get any kickbacks. I don't get any commissions. I don't ask for a fee. I don't ask for any money. I'm like, these people do not work for me, right? I am recommending them to our customers because I fully believe in their capacity, that they're capable, that they're trustworthy, that they know what they're doing, that they have a success rate. The minute that somebody is not reliable, no longer performing being successful as they once were, maybe at the beginning, they're out of the guide. So, or maybe they're not answering calls, or maybe, they messed up somebody's form and then that customer had to hire somebody else, they're out, right? Because we have no room for recommending people that aren't excellent. And there's so many excellent recommendations. So anyway, just to speak a little bit about the Complete Mexico Relocation Guide. If you end up purchasing it, you get a directory that we have personally vetted. We talk to our facilitators and all of our contacts in the online guide regularly. And, we have asked them all the things that you would need to know in order to know if they are reputable, in order to know if they are competent, and in order to know if it's reasonable what they're charging. Because there are also people who I think are a little bit unreasonable on what they charge. And therefore, that's why I sometimes don't recommend those people. Now, that brings me to my next point, and that is, how much does a facilitator charge? So a facilitator charges anywhere between 4,000 to 10,000 pesos per person, roughly. I mean, it fully depends on what level of involvement they are going to be, like how involved are they going to be in your process? Are they just helping you fill out forms and accompanying you to the immigration offices? Are they doing the appointment for you at the consulate or embassy? Are they helping you pay all the immigration fees? Like, is that included in their total fee? Usually it's not. Fees for immigration are usually separate because you have to pay with your card. And facilitators don't usually pay that for you. You have to pay with your own card. Will they wait in line for you to get an appointment at immigration? And that is usually where a lot of our customers say that alone is the best money I spent, right? Because some of these immigration offices, they open at 6, 7, 5 a.m. and you have to start lining up at those hours to get an appointment for 9, 10, 11, 12 p.m. or maybe even later, or maybe the following day. And a lot of these facilitators, what they do is they spend the night there. They send a helper to spend the night there and queue up or like hold your place in line so that you can be one of the first people in line, so that you can get your residency document finalized, your visa, in a timely fashion. And a lot of people don't realize that. And so, especially if you're going to somewhere like Huatulco or Mérida or Progreso or Playa del Carmen, where it's really hot and they might have like just a little bit of shade, but the line could be around the door and you have to wait in that sun. So, hiring these facilitators is really helpful because they do all that waiting in line for you. And then most of the time they just call you and tell you, hey, you need to start showing up because in the next hour or so, they're going to want to do your biometrics, which is your fingerprints, your picture, your payment, and then, of course, hand in your documents. The other thing is, like, are they going to handle translating any documents for you? For the purpose of whenever you're applying for your family to join you in Mexico, which we call family unification or unity, there needs to be a translation of birth certificates, marriage certificates, and it needs to be done by a perito traductor, which is an official translator in Mexico. It can't be done just by some person who happens to know both languages and is willing to translate a document for you. No, they have to have a seal. And that seal is very important for immigration purposes. So does a facilitator have a perito traductor that they work with? And, will they cover the charges of the perito traductor, the translator, in their fees? So something that you don't have to worry about trying to find on your own. And all of our facilitators that we work with, they all have perito traductores that they work with. So it's one less thing that you have to worry about. That's part of the benefit of working with one of our recommendations. Now, let's say that you are, by the way, how much does a facilitator charge? So anywhere between 4,000 to 10,000 pesos per person. There are a couple of facilitators that will give you a discount if it's more than just you applying. So like, let's say you're applying with your spouse, or maybe you're bringing your children with you, you're petitioning your children, one of those situations, right? So there are some facilitators that will give you discounts for having multiple applications because, usually it's only one visit to immigration for family members. But it all depends. So before you end up agreeing to hiring a facilitator, make sure you understand exactly what it is that they are going to be doing for you. Usually they will ask for a deposit, and then you need to find out when is the rest due. And how will you pay it? Will you pay it through PayPal? Will you pay it through Wise? Will you pay it in cash? Can you get a receipt for that? Those kinds of things are things that you should be asking any facilitator, whether you hire one from our recommendations list or whether you go and seek out one on your own. In the 4 to 10,000 peso range is high because, again, the level of involvement depends on who you're hiring. Some of them will obviously be very involved, and some of them will be a little bit more hands-off. And so you have to know what you're paying for. 4 to 10,000 pesos in today's exchange rate is anywhere between around, I'm going to try to do math in my head. It's anywhere between $250 to about $600 roughly in today's exchange rate. So that's another thing that you have to keep in mind, is obviously knowing what the exchange rate is for your home country when you're asking for these totals from the facilitator that you want to work with. So let's say that you're not ready to move yet, right? Like you are thinking of moving to Mexico. That's your 2 to 3 year long-term plan. However, you want to start your immigration process or your residency visa process pretty soon, because you see that everything has been changing. It changes every year. That's kind of a given. Like the requirements change every year, but even throughout the year, some things change, whether it's through the special regularization program or sometimes in just the little nuances of whatever the consulates require, or sometimes even the nuances of whatever immigration offices require. So at what point should you hire a facilitator? I personally recommend that you hire one as soon as you're ready to apply. So if you're ready to get the process started at your nearest consulate or embassy, assuming that you're going the traditional economic solvency route, then I would reach out to a facilitator as soon as you know that you're going to be applying, because they will know when you're coming to Mexico, about when you're planning to do the second part of the process. They can tell you what their schedule looks like, maybe when is a better time to travel, what the landscape is looking like for around those dates, assuming that you have some idea of when you're going to be traveling. The other thing is, I would definitely not reach out to a facilitator more than 6 months before applying, just because, one, you have up to 180 days after you're granted your sticker or your pre-approval from the Mexican consulate or embassy to travel to Mexico and then finish that process in Mexico. So 180 days is equal to about 6 months. So hiring a facilitator more than 6 months out is just really not necessary. So I would say just hire one, plan on hiring one as soon as you know when you're ready to start the process at a Mexican consulate, or plan on hiring one as soon as you have been pre-approved by your Mexican embassy or consulate. For the special regularization program, so for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a really, really neat program that they've extended into this year. We don't know if it's going to be available next year, but it is available right now. And it's for people who have visited Mexico once before between 2015 and 2022 and can prove it by having a stamp or a visa, right, seal on their passport. A stamp that says you visited Mexico on this date and this is the amount of days that you're allowed to stay in the country. If you have proof of that, even if it's an old passport, it's expired, but you still have access to it, as long as you have proof of that, then you can then travel to Mexico, overstay your tourist visa, which is your FMM. I know it's kind of backwards, but you can overstay your FMM, and as soon as your FMM is now expired, then you're eligible to apply for regularización, which means you are now irregular because your FMM is expired. You're never illegal in Mexico, by the way. You're just irregular. So the Mexican government really wants to try to help you become regular, which is why it's called regularización. So you can then wait for your FMM to expire. And then you need to, obviously, they're going to do a case study showing, how many times you came before, where are you planning to actually live? They might ask you some questions like that. They do a study for every applicant. And then, you pay your fees for a 4-year temporary residency visa. The biggest benefit of this special regularization program is that you actually don't need economic solvency to be able to get a 4-year temporary residency visa, which is great. It's huge, especially because the economic solvency requirements have skyrocketed. And for a lot of people, it's no longer feasible for them to get residency, but they can afford to live in Mexico on their Social Security or their pension, but they just can't afford the economic solvency requirements. If you want to learn more about that special regularization program, I'm going to leave a link in the comments. I give you more details about it. And for that program specifically, I really think you need to hire a facilitator, especially one that is familiar with the Registro Nacional de Extranjeros, which is the RNE, which is the special regularization program. Not all of them are familiar with this program, so be careful who you hire too, because there's a lot of scammers out there, unfortunately. And, they're really good at pretending to be really good at their job. And unfortunately, you don't know any better. So just make sure that you really do your homework, vet the people that you hire. If you don't want to have to rely on your own instincts, we've done that homework for you. So you can rely on the people that we have in our online guide to be very, very reputable. Other common questions that I get, and I'm definitely going to get to your questions, so keep posting them. I'm going to get to all your questions. Don't worry. Other common things that we get asked by our customers or subscribers about hiring a facilitator in Mexico is, should I hire a facilitator in, is it okay if I go do my residency visa in one city, but I actually don't plan on living there, and I plan on living, or maybe I'm going to scout different parts of Mexico for 6 months, a year, 2 years, while I really figure out where I want to live. Where should I hire this facilitator? And the best answer I can give you is hire the facilitator in the city. Number one, your priority should be to hire a facilitator in the city where you intend to live. It'll minimize the amount of times that you have to visit immigration and make a change of address. It'll minimize your risk of immigration, possibly doing a home check. And if you don't actually live there, then you can get penalized with a fee. So I would say number one priority, if you know you're going to be living in XYZ town or city, then hire a facilitator there or in the nearest city nearby. If you don't know where you're going to be living, then I would say go ahead and go to a city where you plan to spend some extra time in. Usually the turnaround time for the second part of the process in Mexico is usually done in 1 to 2 days. But of course, things can change from now until tomorrow. Tomorrow things can be completely different, or next week or next month. But right now it's about a 1 to 2 day process in most immigration offices, unless they run out of plastic cards, unless there's a problem with your paperwork, unless there's a problem with the system, or unless there's, no appointments available because you didn't get there early enough. And so you have to wait till the following day. And then now they're not giving appointments until 3 days out. So there's a lot of caveats to what can change that 1 to 2 day time frame. Which again, a facilitator can be very upfront with you of like, hey, this is how much time I would book my travel for if you're only planning on coming to Mexico to do the second part of your process. We normally recommend that you give yourselves at least a week. And on the day that you have your immigration appointment scheduled, I would say don't schedule anything else. Even if your facilitator tells you that it should be only a 1 to 2 hour process, I still wouldn't schedule anything else for that evening, because you just never know. There have been hiccups before where like, oh, this wasn't spelled out correctly, and now you have to go get copies from somewhere, and that's across town. Or maybe just give yourself the day so that you're not worried about anything but just getting your residency card. So yeah, that's another thing that comes up. Where should I hire the facilitator? Another thing that facilitators have told me that they think is important for us to tell our customers, or you guys even watching from home, even if you never buy the online guide, is, and this is a little bit tricky because I wouldn't say just like wholeheartedly trust anybody that you hire. I definitely think there are people that don't have your best interest at heart. We don't recommend them. I'm not going to mention them on here, but I will talk about the people that we do recommend. So if you hire any one of our recommendations, trust them. Trust that what they're telling you is in your best interest. If they ask you to keep your passport because they needed to then collect your cards, or because they needed to collect your NUT, which is your número único de trámite, or whatever documents that they need for your residency visa process, if they need a picture of your passport beforehand because they need to check with immigration to see if you qualify for the special regularization program, trust them. These are professionals. They're not looking to steal your information. They're not looking to steal your passport. I wouldn't say that about everybody out there, but I would definitely say that about the people that we recommend. So trust them. If they tell you that you need to come back at a certain time because, immigration is asking them for additional information, trust them. You're hiring them. So really place your trust in that they know what's best for your case or for your trámite or for your process. So just trust them, especially the people that we recommend. One big thing is if you're not familiar with this, get familiar with it, and that is WhatsApp. WhatsApp is going to be the way that you communicate with everyone, not only in Mexico. I mean, this is Latin America, Asia, but certainly Mexico. This is how everyone communicates. Sending a WhatsApp text message is the way that you will most likely communicate with your immigration facilitator. Some of them do email some things back and forth, especially if you need to upload any documents or they need to ask you for bigger files. But for the most part, the initial communication will be done through WhatsApp. WhatsApp is a free app. It's very easy to use. It's available on Android and iOS. It's even available on desktop. I use it all the time on my desktop. It's really great. And I mean, everyone from your immigration facilitator to your lawyer to, if you have kids or school teachers, to your doctor, to, even the person who maybe delivers meals to your house, or even, other services like somebody who comes and helps you clean your house. Everyone messages through WhatsApp. So get used to it, start using it. If you're not familiar on what it is, just do a quick YouTube search for how to use WhatsApp. It's very easy to use. You do need to have an internet connection. So if you're traveling to Mexico and your plan doesn't cover international roaming, you need to be connected either to Wi-Fi. You need to either get an eSIM before you travel to Mexico, or what I personally recommend is that when you get to Mexico, you visit your nearest OXXO or your nearest Telcel offices and get a SIM locally in Mexico. Or find out if your service provider has unlimited data between you and in Mexico as well. Sometimes, a lot of companies offer that, like AT&T, T-Mobile. I think Verizon also does a limited amount. And then you can use WhatsApp. So that's a huge tip. If you want to learn more about any one of these things and how to hire a facilitator, how to book an appointment through the consulate, how the residency visa process works, which facilitators we recommend, how much they charge, the special regularization program, all of that is covered in our Complete Mexico Relocation Guide. If you want to learn more about how to get access to the Complete Mexico Relocation Guide, I've included the link here at the bottom. Okay, so let's get to some of your questions here. Thank you all so much for being here. All right, let's see. What do facilitators charge? Should we apply for temporary residency even if we're not sure we will be retiring there, but we want to spend a while snowbird season there? So facilitators, again, charge anywhere from 4,000 to about 10,000 pesos per person. Some of them will require a deposit up front. Usually they require some form of deposit up front, and then usually the final payment is done once you receive your card. It depends on who you hire, of course. I personally, yes, recommend that if you plan on spending any amount of time snowbirding in Mexico, especially if you're planning on spending what it seems like 6 months at a time, that you do get residency. And the reason for that is tourist visas are no longer an automatic 180 days. A lot of people do get 180 days still in today's days, especially if you use the automated kiosks that they have in Mexico City and in Cancun. But it's not a guarantee. So if you're planning on at any point in the future getting residency, I would secure it now, because you never know what the requirements are going to be in 2, 3, 4 years when you do actually retire. Um, and yeah, you should start with temporary residency. Usually, most people will start with temporary residency regardless, because to apply for permanent residency and be granted permanent residency, most consulates and embassies want to see that you are, one, over the age of 60, two, that you're retired, and three, the income requirements for that are significantly higher than for temporary residency. So most people start with temporary residency first, and then once they meet the 4-year requirement, they can switch to permanent residency without having to prove financial or economic solvency again. That's awesome, Rick. I'm glad you found somebody that has been working out for you. San Miguel de Allende is also an office that I think is great to work in. And we do have a great recommendation there that is, she's a sweetheart. She's so knowledgeable. She's so well connected. And she's very efficient. She's very successful with our customers. Do immigration facilitators help you analyze if that location is a good fit for you? To some extent. The immigration facilitator, it depends on what you're asking. If you're asking on the US side or on the Mexico side, I'm going to assume that you're asking on the US, Canadian, European side. To some extent, assuming that they have knowledge with that consulate or with that embassy. A lot of facilitators that we work with or that we recommend, especially the ones that help our customers get appointments, are very familiar with which consulates or embassies are really easy to work with, or which ones have less strict requirements, or which ones are more lenient, or which ones have appointments sooner. So they can give you some form of guidance, especially the ones that help you book appointments. And as far as, what city in Mexico, no, they will likely only know the requirements for the city that they live in. With a few exceptions, there are a couple of facilitators that we recommend that have offices across Mexico, and so they know because they have satellite offices in those cities. But to some extent, I hope that helps you out. Let's see. My issue now is I cannot get the time off from work to facilitate the whole process. I can only get 1 week off at a time. Is there other options, as I know I have to bring that paper down to Mexico? I think a week is plenty of time, assuming that your documents are in order. And I, again, would recommend hiring a facilitator to ensure that they can help you look at your documents before you come, to ensure that you actually have everything in order. It looks like you're moving to Huatulco. So we have an excellent recommendation there that can definitely help you out. And I think a week is a good amount of time. Huatulco is usually a 1-day process. And, they usually don't have like a huge line for appointments, meaning that if you get there early enough or your facilitator gets there early enough, you're usually given an appointment for the same day. Would it be better to use a facilitator when doing an application as a couple or only for individually? It really is up to you, Eileen. I personally, if you're going to be hiring somebody to help you out, I would also hire them to help out my spouse, because you're not going to know the application for you as a main applicant. If you're going to be petitioning your spouse, is completely different, right? So it's a different process. It's a different application. They probably will give you a different appointment. So all that is a little bit different than if you are the main applicant, you have your stamp from your Mexican consulate or embassy saying you've been pre-approved and you're just coming and doing your canje. That's different than if, like me, Eileen, is now petitioning my husband to join me in Mexico. So for that reason, yes, I would personally recommend that you hire somebody to help you with this, with your spouse as well. And that is usually done on separate days. So when you do your canje and you get your residency card, that is usually one process, one trámite. Get used to this word because you're going to hear it a lot in Mexico, trámite, and that is just the process of anything, right? Legal. So one process is going to be you, and then an additional process is going to be your spouse or your children or whoever it is you're petitioning. I got my temporary residency in 1 day. It did cost extra. I did get my Mexico visa at a Mexican consulate and got my canje during immigration at the Cancun airport. That's awesome. Yeah, congratulations. Especially depending on the time of year, I have found that, and especially in very, very, very popular cities like Playa del Carmen or in Cancun or San Miguel de Allende sometimes, where people really want to live there, or even sometimes in Querétaro or Los Cabos. Think of like these areas where people really want to live there. Sometimes facilitators are just, they have a lot of customers. So in order to help out people in the best way possible, they might offer to expedite your process for a little bit more. If you're willing to pay, then you might get kicked up to the, front of the line. Not all facilitators do that, and it doesn't happen, year round. So just keep that in mind, right? It's absolutely optional. Let's see. Hello, I qualify for the R&E program. I'm a member in the facilitator and have the facilitator list. I'm 100% flexible and unsure where to apply from, how long I'll need to be there, suggestions. Yeah, so I will say that most offices in my current experience, and it all depends on when, thank you again, by the way, for buying the guide. First of all, thank you for being a customer. My experience has been that depending on when you're going to be doing the regularization program, it can change. So if you're planning on applying, let's say you can come to Mexico next week and you can wait for your FMM to expire and get that process started, right? Then I would say that these are like the 4 cities that I recommend. La Paz is one of them, Los Cabos, Aguascalientes, San Miguel de Allende, and probably Playa del Carmen. Those are like my top 4 or 5. Why? Because I feel that the immigration authorities in those offices tend to be the most lenient as far as like, okay, they're not going to put a bunch of like, speed bumps along the way and also the facilitators that I personally recommend in those cities have a really huge success rate. Now, the thing you have to remember is that you will have to travel to Mexico and you will have to wait for your FMM to expire. So a tip for that, for anybody watching, because most airports will give you a variety of days on that FMM. Some will give you 8 days, some will give you 30 days, some will give you 180 days, and you have to wait for that to expire for you to qualify or for you to be able to apply for this R&E program. So my tip is, if you can, try to go through a land border. Land borders are usually a little bit more lenient as far as you being able to ask for less days. We've had customers ask for 5 days, 7 days, and then obviously just wait for that to expire before they can apply. People coming in through Tijuana and then, applying in Rosarito, or maybe driving all the way to La Paz or Los Cabos, making a whole road trip out of it, which is a beautiful drive if you can swing it. So, or, a lot of people enter through Texas and then drive to Aguascalientes and then just wait for their FMM to expire there. We also have heard of people who come in through Belize and then also get a short stay or a short FMM there, usually 3, 4, 5 days. So it really depends on where you're coming in from. And then through Belize, they apply in Playa del Carmen, or maybe they apply in Progreso or Merida. Maybe you can take the new Mayan train and explore that. So those are my recommendations. It all depends on what allowance or how long the FMM you're given by an immigration agent. I would also recommend that if you're trying to get this regularization program and you're flying in, you just can't drive in, that you try to avoid that you avoid using the automated kiosks. And those are, they're basically like a wall of plexiglass, and they usually have, a kiosk on it. And these are used for tourists coming in to help facilitate or help, get the lines to be a lot shorter and let people just check themselves into the country. Those usually give you 180 days automatically. So I would avoid those if you're trying to stay less than 180 days for the sole purposes of this regularization program. I would also avoid major airports like Mexico City or maybe Cancun. Instead, try to fly to other airports, like maybe, the one in Silao, in Guanajuato. I've heard good things about that one. I've heard good things about the one in Querétaro. I've also heard good things about the one in Aguascalientes. So yeah, there's different ways for you to go about it, but this is now. And again, this can change in a week. So just take that with a grain of salt. Yeah, that's another great point, Henry. Thank you so much for being here. Another reason why I think hiring a facilitator is a huge benefit is because all the forms are in Spanish. Immigration agents will only speak Spanish. All the bureaucracy is in Spanish. So even if you can go to the sites to get your own forms, to download them, to fill them out, everything's going to be in Spanish. So it just depends on how comfortable you are with your level of Spanish, right? Again, it's absolutely doable if you want to try to do it on your own. But I have had people tell me, we tried to do it on our own and we got, sent back, or this was wrong. And then, 3 days later, I just said, screw it. I'm going to hire somebody. And it was the best money I ever spent, because again, it's only like, you're talking about maybe $250 to maybe $600, depending on, again, what level of involvement they're going to be involved in. And it's really not that much money when you're considering that this is probably the most important document that you need in order for you to legally live in Mexico. Personally, that's the way I see it. But of course, everybody's resources are different. So I just want you to know that, yes, it can be done on your own. It just depends on how educated you are. So hopefully the free resource that I pointed to you guys, if you're willing to do it on your own, will help you. If not, hire somebody. And don't just hire anybody, hire somebody reputable, because again, they are going to charge you money, right? So you want to make sure that you have somebody who is going to help you be successful in this process. This is a great question. My tourist visa was from before 2015. Can I use it? We drove to Mexico. The reason I say the special regularization program requirements are between 2015 and 2022 isn't because you won't be eligible if you came before 2015. You are actually eligible if you came before 2015, as long as you have a stamp in your passport that shows that you came to Mexico. So as long as you came before 2022, then you can qualify for this R&E program. But the problem is that a lot of the processes for how people were being checked in or registered as tourists in the country changed after 2015. And therefore, there's a lot of like non-stamp or no way to show or prove that you came to Mexico before 2015 for a lot of people. But if you have proof in your passport that you came, usually that happens because you flew in or you drove in and you stopped by immigration and got your FMM, then yeah, you can definitely qualify. The other thing that I want to mention about this is, there was one thing that it's going to come back to me. I'll come back to it, but it just came to me and I just left my head. But there was one thing about that 2015. I mentioned at some point, like earlier this year, that you needed to have either 1 or 2 visits between 2015 and 2022, because when they first started saying that, hey, we're gonna extend this program and now it's going to be available, again in 2024. They had initially mentioned, and I mean immigration and the facilitators that we recommend had initially mentioned to me that they were thinking it might be like you needed to have 2 previous visits, or it might be 1, but no, it's only 1, and that's across the board at the immigration offices where the regularization or R&E program is being processed. That's another thing. Not all immigration offices offer this program. So something you have to consider when doing this. Most of them do. Most of the popular ones anyway that people want to go to. But if it's like a small rural town, especially like if you're going to, I believe it's like the one in San Cristobal de las Casas in Chiapas. They have so many people coming in through the Guatemalan border that the last I heard, they weren't doing this program. Another one is, for example, Mazatlan. I heard that they were putting the RNE program on pause. If you have gotten the regularization program in Mazatlan in 2024, I would love to hear from you. But earlier this year, when I was doing kind of my research and talking to all the facilitators that we work with across Mexico, Mazatlan was not very clear on whether they were offering this program to anybody applying there. So anyway, hope that helps you out. I'm considering a facilitator in Tijuana, though I'm hoping to live in Rosarito. Should I look for a facilitator in Rosarito instead? Yeah, you should look for a facilitator in Rosarito instead, because that'll help you avoid having to do a change of address in the future. And you should just try to get your residency visa canje done in the city where you intend to live. If you need a recommendation, we have a great recommendation in Rosarito. Yes, the RNE program is the same as the special regularization program. The official name is Registro Nacional de Extranjeros, which is what you see, RNE. Special regularization program is just like a word that I came up with just to help you understand, like it's a special regularization program, but it's not official by any means. Yes, I have a great list of recommendations in Guanajuato and in San Miguel de Allende and in Querétaro and across many cities in Mexico: Puebla, Mérida, Progreso, Cancún, Cozumel, Playa del Carmen, Los Cabos, La Paz, Rosarito, Aguascalientes, Mexico City, Cuernavaca, so many. I have a ton of recommendations across Puerto Vallarta, Nuevo Vallarta. So yeah, I have a ton of recommendations across Mexico, Guadalajara, Chapala. So yes, I have recommendations all over Mexico. Great question. Is there an income requirement for family reunification? If you're going to be applying as a family at the Mexican consulate or embassy, usually, yes, there is an income requirement for family members. However, it's not a requirement for you to apply as a family from the very beginning, which is huge, because if you apply in Mexico, one of you has to be obviously approved. One of you has to be a resident. And as long as one of you is a resident, then you can petition your spouse or your children, as long as they're under the age of 18 and not married, to join you in Mexico without them having to prove economic solvency. So that's one of those things that, again, just doesn't get publicized. And you wouldn't know that unless you talk to these facilitators who are experts in their fields. I'm telling you guys, I've learned so much from them. And thanks to them, really, Mexico Relocation Guide is what it is, because they have helped me write the entire online guide. I wouldn't even have this company if it wasn't for the amazing contacts that we work with and that we recommend. And I think the respect is mutual, because we send them a lot of business. And again, we don't recommend just anybody. So when you buy the guide, you can rest assured that you're going to get quality people. That's awesome. Thank you so much for being a customer, Calvin. I really appreciate it. My wife and I both qualify for solvency given the requirements. Is it better to do the applications separately? It depends on the consulate that you're going to be applying with. Some consulates require, just to give you an example, right? Some consulates require that the spouse have an additional $500 a month in income for them to qualify for residency. And since some consulates will require that the spouse have an extra $1,500, there is a formula, but it doesn't seem that all consulates adhere to it. And then some consulates just want each one of you to apply individually. Like, they don't care if there is an actual formula for dependents. They want each applicant to individually apply, unless of course it's children, right? Then that's the only like exception to that. But if for whatever reason one of you doesn't qualify, but your spouse does, have them apply And as long as you can then, both travel to Mexico, your spouse will come in as a tourist. And once you are done receiving your residency visa, you can then apply for your spouse. So it's actually pretty straightforward with the help of a professional. It's actually pretty straightforward, and it's a great benefit. Mexico's very family oriented, so they want to keep families together. It's very important to the government to keep families together and to the culture, right, of this country. So for those reasons, the immigration laws are very lenient to ensure that families can stay together. All right, I'm going to try to find one more question that hasn't already been answered. So no, your facilitator usually does not live in Phoenix or anywhere in the United States or anywhere in Canada or anywhere outside of Mexico. The facilitator lives in Mexico. If you do hire them to help you with the appointment in Phoenix, they do that all remotely. And then once you decide where you're going to be going to, well, assuming that you hire that facilitator in the city of Mexico where you intend to live or visit or land, or because you really just know that, they have a faster turnaround time then, the facilitator then meets with you in that city and then helps you through the second part of that process at that immigration office in that city in Mexico. So I hope that's clear. They will not go with you to the consulate in Phoenix. They can help you with, and not all of them can help you with this part of the appointment setting, but the ones that do it remotely. So I hope that's clear. Cool. If you have a stamp in your passport that shows that you came to San Luis Potosí, then you should definitely apply for the R&E program. That's great. I love that you are able to prove that you can come in, and I'd say start applying for sure. Because again, there's always talk about the special regularization program not being available in 2025, and they've been saying that since 2021 when this program was announced. They've been saying like, oh, it's only going to be 1 more year, or maybe 6 more months, or whatever the case might be. But so far, they've extended it every single year. The fees for that program, by the way, are around, it's about 17,000 pesos, or around 18,000 pesos, I think now, because again, you have to consider like they're going to do a study. You have to pay for your 4 years of residency up front. This does not include facilitator fees, by the way. And then, of course, there's something else that they charge for. Let's see. I thought I had it here. I have it in our online guide. But anyway, it's around 17,000 pesos, which is around $1,000, $1,100 at today's exchange rate. And that doesn't include the facilitator's fees, which you're looking at an extra $200-$300 depending on who you hire, or $200 to $400 depending on who you hire. Usually facilitators charge less for the regularization program than they do for canje, especially if they're not going to be assisting you in the consulate or embassy abroad. So something to consider also. It's usually a little bit less for them to help you with this process. Yeah, great question, Melanie. I'm late. Maybe you've answered this. This is my first time now, 2024. Would I have to leave and come back in 2015? So for the special regularization program, if you've never visited Mexico before today, you don't qualify, right? You have to have visited Mexico before 2022, at least once. And the way to prove it is through stamps on your passport. If you drove in, you would need to stop at immigration, INM, and ask for an FMM, which is a Forma Migratoria Múltiple, which is essentially your tourist visa. If you have proof of that, then you qualify. If you've never been to Mexico before 2024, or you've never been to Mexico at all in your life, then you wouldn't qualify for the R&E program as of right now. Now, of course, if they extend this program, which it seems they have been doing every year, and you visit now in 2024, and in 2026, they say anybody who came in 2024 and beyond qualifies, then you would qualify then. But that is a big if, right? We don't know what's going to happen in 2026. I hope that answers your question. All right. Well, thank you so much. That's my time today. I hope this has been helpful. Again, if you want to learn more about immigration facilitators, or if you want to learn about the residency visa process, and you want somebody who has done all the homework for you, has vetted these contacts, some of them have even special pricing for our Mexico Relocation Guide customers. And again, if you just don't want to have to find the time to do this all on your own, which trust me, it's a lot of work, check out our guide. Again, it's mexicorelocationguide.com/guide. And we also have a ton of free resources on our website. So if you go to mexicorelocationguide.com/resources, we have a lot of free resources from our residency visa guide to living in Mexico guide, which gives you like a really good breakdown of all the most important basic topics that you need to consider before moving to Mexico. I also have a page on Mexico rentals, and that just gives you like an idea across different cities from high end to low end, what rentals go for, and what they look like, just to give you like at least a baseline of what your cost of living in Mexico truly could be. And then, of course, we have a ton of videos on our YouTube channel that break down not only what it's like to live in every particular city, but then also we interview a lot of you guys who have made the move and share your insight with our audience as far as your cost of living, your fears, how did you prepare for your move, what are some likes and dislikes, all those things. So you can find that all on our YouTube channel, as well as any previous recordings that we've done like this for an Ask Me Anything about specific topics or just an Ask Me Anything. I'm going to try to do this once a month and give you guys at least one specific topic to focus on, like today, which was immigration facilitators. And hopefully that'll give you guys some clarity into how to prepare for your move to Mexico. So that way you can do it the right way. So thank you so much for joining me tonight, and I hope to see you all very soon. Nos vemos. Hasta luego.